I don't have a gavel, but
We're here.
she's a good gal. Anyway, this is the meeting of the Amendment Review Committee, and you all have the agenda and the materials such as they are in front of you. Why don't we first do call the roll, clerk? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Boone. Commissioner Menke. Commissioner Perry.
Here.
Commissioner Rubenstein is absent. Commissioner Sandberg.
She's
excused absent. That's right.
Present.
Commissioner Sandberg.
Present.
Commissioner Clegg.
Here.
And Chair Kozak.
Here.
6 present.
Well, thank you. Well, there's clearly a quorum. The next thing, adopting the agenda. Can I entertain a motion for someone to say that?
Second.
If there are no objections, all those in favor, opposed, I assume it.
Aye.
Aye.
The agenda is adopted. And then the acceptance of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion for that. All those in favor?
I'll abstain because I was not at the meeting.
Likewise. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion is adopted. So, now to the substance, such as it is. The chair's report. I don't have anything to report because I wasn't the chair the last time. Commissioner Ginder was. I don't even remember what the discussion was way back in
January.
What we were discussing.
Maybe it would be appropriate to see if Casey knows the status of Commissioner Ginder's.
I don't. I'm not prepared to speak to that. I recall that we have 2, I think, seats.
Two
yet?
open
Vacancies,
seats.
yeah.
2 seats, and
Two.
one of them is because I'm going to call her Tony, and I'm sorry for Newberg. Commissioner Newborn.
Tony Newberg.
Between our last meeting and this meeting, turned in her formal resignation notice to the judge, and so he also has a new administrative assistant that is helping him. So his experienced administrative assistant is gone. He's got a new administrative assistant. Commissioner Newborn turned in her resignation since our last meeting, and so I need to reach out to the judge and his new assistant and get that process
Well,
going.
there are 2 vacancies then.
Yes,
Right.
yes. Newborn's creates the second one.
Right.
Well, I don't think whatever happened in January, and I don't have a copy of the minutes in front of me.
I have the committee report pulled up. There was an item related to amending the charter for even year.
Oh, the even
Oh, the
year,
even year.
numbered
That's
years.
what we did.
Yeah.
which we dealt with.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that was it.
Well, then let's move to the discussion, and which is why we're here. Let me just read the email that came. I don't know who it's from. It says, somebody from Ward 12 identifying him or her as he or she as independent body. And what it says, very simply, public recall of public officials. The citizens of Minneapolis need a way to recall elected and appointed officials from office. We should not have to wait out their term if they are not meeting expectations or performing in a manner we see fit. That's it. And that's why we're here to discuss that.
Well, there was a second one also, Chair Kozak.
Let's see.
The second one was extremely similar. It's almost virtually the same, except
Oh, yeah, here it is.
It's more technical.
Yeah, let me read that then. I am right, that's on your sheet, the second one. I am writing to request that the Minneapolis City Charter be amended to include a provision allowing for recall of city officials for malfeasance and nonfeasance. Put another way, it's an urgent matter when elected city officials fail to uphold the law and fail to act in furtherance of the safety of law-abiding citizens. Commissioner Sandberg, you're right, it is more specific, and at least, other than saying we might want to recall someone we just don't like them, this has malfeasance and nonfeasance and failure to uphold. So that's it.
Chair, I think also there's a slight difference between the emphasis on elected versus just city officials.
Yeah.
City officials, I think, Casey, it's people who are appointed as well as elected. But in the second one, they call specifically elected.
Well,
Mr. Chair,
one-
I'm sorry.
yeah, one says elected and appointed, the other one implies elected.
I would offer a few comments to the committee. The first is that I believe, and Michael can correct me if I'm incorrect on this, that the comments came in through our online portal unsolicited. They don't require someone to submit a name, so they can submit anonymously. We've given you the exact printout of what we received in the office as it came through. And then, of course, recall is not allowed for statutory cities in the state of Minnesota. So a home rule charter city like Minneapolis can include in its charter a provision subject to Minnesota statutes 410.20. So 410.20 says that a charter city can include in its charter a provision for recall, provided it follows the statutory process. So the statutory process is, of course, a petition. A petition has to be validated, and then there can be put on the ballot a recall question of an officer. It is limited to elected officials, so to your point, Commissioner Perry, it does not extend to what I would call administrative officials or officers of the city, but is limited to those who are elected by the people, can be recalled by the people. Only in home rule charter cities, only if it's in the charter. So we don't have that provision in our charter today. So even though we are a home rule charter city, we could not take advantage of that provision. You have to actually incorporate it into your charter to allow for recall.
And I have a copy of Minnesota Statute Section 410.20 and a copy of Chapter 8 of St. Paul's Charter, which includes their recall provision, and I will give them both to Michael to attach to the meeting minutes.
It's a very short statutory, I mean, the statutory language is quite brief.
What does this say? What criterion does the St. Paul Charter set out as a reason to recall somebody?
The petition says, any person holding an elective office other than an office created by special law may be removed by recall. The petition shall state at the head of each page a demand for the removal of the officer, the office held, and a brief description of the grounds for recall.
And that's your malfeasance thing.
I don't have it in front of me, but I can certainly circulate this. There are other statutes that describe when officers can be recalled, because the statutes that deal with cities generally provide a prohibition against that unless you're a home rule. The interpretation, as I understand it from the League of Minnesota Cities, which provides a handbook for cities, references those state statutes for malfeasance, misfeasance, failure to perform. There are a series, there's a very limited number of reasons that you would allow for recall of state officials. The assumption is that that would carry down to local government, right, as divisions of state government, if a home rule charter city were to provide for recall. So my assumption, I don't know if this is true, my assumption is that the reason the language in the St. Paul Charter, for example, mirrors the limited language that deals with city recall is because there's this chain back to why would you have recall of a state officer.
Makes sense.
So do you think it would be insufficient then if your petition just say, I'm supporting recall because I preferred the other guy?
Yeah, I think that would be an insufficient reason for recall.
Insufficient.
Right.
Casey, to your knowledge, has the St. Paul recall ever been invoked?
I don't know. I can certainly check.
In all the years I've been around, I don't ever remember
No.
any discussion of that.
And I failed to look this up, but I believe, and Mr. Chair of the Commission, Chairman Clegg may know this, when we were looking at the Duluth charter, I want to say Duluth includes this too. I want to say Duluth and St. Paul both include recall, that of the first-class cities, we were the only one that did not.
And Two Harbors has recall.
Yeah, that's how they got rid of
That's how
the
they got rid
underwater
of.
hotel guy.
Right.
Are they-
Yeah, underwater. guy.
They're not a home, are they?
Yeah, they're charged.
Oh,
They're a charter city, they're not a first-class city.
Right.
Oh,
So there are 4 charter cities that are also the 4 first-class cities of the state of Minnesota, which is, first class is just based on population.
and yeah, I wondered about the Two Harbors situation, that the mayor up there,
Right.
they're trying to bounce out. And now, but that's under the auspices of the state law or?
It would be under their charter, which
their
mimics the
charter?
state law.
Okay,
Right.
all right.
And the charters can vary quite a bit by the percentage of signatures you need from the previous election.
Yeah, I was just reviewing it, it doesn't
Does
state
it have
it.
to be 20%? Or some of them I thought were, and maybe I'm thinking of something else we discussed previously.
Both St. Paul and Two Harbors, which were the only ones I looked at today, were 20%.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I wonder if
The,
that's.
the authorizing statute says that the petition be by a certain percentage, so it would have to be fixed in the charter. The statute doesn't say what that
Okay.
percentage is.
Okay, and one may have done it because the other one did 20%, so I
Don't know.
And it is for that specific office. So we were just discussing it, so for a ward, it would be by the number of ballots, percentage of ballots cast in the previous city election for that ward.
One
Not-
presumes that's how
Well,
the
that's-
charter would be written. I don't think
I
that's a
would
given.
I would think that's
Because
something
they're-
that either the charter language would have to specify.
And it does in St. Paul.
Correct.
Oh, is
In
that
other words,
true?
what I'm saying to you is I don't know that the charter amendment would have to specify how that is.
Yes, okay.
Is
You're
the
right.
easy answer.
And whether it would be the whole city or that ward that would be
Correct.
the arbiters.
Correct.
Um,
Or district in the case of parks.
Well, that must be relatively recent, because I remember, I think most of us remember before you got here, when St. Paul had all at-large. And they just went to, this 25 years ago, they went to the aldermanic system.
Oh.
Okay, well, that's an issue that would have to be decided.
Yes.
I guess the next step, we have to decide whether, is it appropriate for us to suggest if this is a serious proposal, the 2 people that wrote in. I think the second email is a bit more thoughtful than the first. The next step would be public hearing, right?
And I
Well,
have
I'm sorry.
I have a question about Commission Chair Clegg had mentioned before that this topic came up several years ago. I think briefly, but we declined to really talk about it because there were so many other things on the ballot. And I don't think even got beyond the.
If you recall, it came up at the last municipal election.
Right, and it was something that was mentioned, and I think the Charter Commission just said there's already some big items on the ballot, let's roll it.
You may recall that the individual who proposed withdrew it. So the Charter
Oh.
Commission did have a hearing. The person who brought that proposal forward withdrew, and the Charter Commission said, we aren't going to take this on our own, and let it die.
Okay. I had totally forgotten about that, that's good to know.
He withdrew it and didn't come to the meeting where we got.
Yeah, I think I vaguely recall.
It was a very quick hearing. We opened it, no one spoke, we closed it, we said we're done.
Okay.
Chair Kozak, there are a series of criteria that Chair Clegg put together that we have applied in the past, and I'm wondering if we're going to do that with this particular item or not, or whether that is, it may be just a pro forma thing at this point.
That's a good idea. but I
Commissioner
don't-
Clegg.
I don't have them with me.
Okay.
I can probably
Do
dig
you
them out.
remember what they are?
Yeah.
Are they in the guide? I thought I incorporated that into the
I
guide.
think you finally put them on the website a year or so ago. I think the first question is this an appropriate topic for the charter?
Is it-
And it sounds
Page
like there's no
18,
question.
page 18 in this guide.
Okay, here it goes, Cindy. There you go.
The first question to consider is it germane to the charter? So for example, something that was clearly in the form of an ordinance would not be germane to the charter. But this state law contemplates that this would be in the charter, so.
Yes, I think, yeah, let's go through them one by one. The first one, I agree, it's germane. Second, is it well considered?
And by that, the intent was, has there been a lot of public discussion about this? Is it, has it been well debated?
Not to our knowledge.
There's some, it's on Twitter. That's where a lot of the discussion has been. I haven't seen it too many other places, but I don't do those other things. I just do a few, so. But not, I wouldn't call it a lot. There's
Well,
definitely some.
Twitter,
I mean, it's people talking, and that's fine. That's how people talk, and that's great.
well, that could be, they might want to recall simply because they didn't like how someone voted on an issue.
Oh, sure.
So, Chair Kozak, let me ask a question. So the petition, wouldn't that come from the folks that are proposing this? And wouldn't that be a first step even before a public hearing or not? Because that would then show you if there's been discussion about it out in the community. I mean, in my life, I hear about this a lot being talked about in South Minneapolis.
Okay.
And to me, the rest of these considerations are a bit premature because we don't have something that I would consider a more formal proposal from somebody. This is pretty sparse. I would like to see some more detail. To me, that might be something that will come out of a public hearing. So we're going to argue about this.
Is this, let me ask this of Casey or Commissioner Clegg. From what you read about in the statute in 410, is petition the only way? Could we, the Charter Commission, initiate this ourselves?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
I think there are some things to level set.
What's that?
You all have the power to take up a
That's what I
proposal that came through the email, or anybody could come to one of your meetings and public comments and say, we think this is a good idea. If the Charter Commission wants to pursue it, usually that's then the referral to the Amendment Review Committee.
Right.
Amendment Review Committee goes through these processes. If
So,
you think that this is...
We would have the discretion to
Correct.
petition, however, the petition and it's validated, the signatures,
Right.
that's sufficient. We don't have any option.
Correct.
It goes on the ballot, no matter
Correct.
what.
But the petition would have to include specific language
Yes.
for the charter, which is what, 5 pages over here for St. Paul? It would have, that's
This-
St. Paul,
this
that's not
relates to
ours, but.
Initiative, referendum, and recall.
Yeah, I would anticipate the language that would come on the petition would be, have a little bit more than is in this email. It would
Correct.
be very specific to
Right.
sections, would get into the malfeasance issues.
And the recallees, the potential recallees, the city council, they get, as I understand, if I recall from the lawsuits last year, they get to decide what the language says, right?
Correct, and so I want to be clear, we're not muddling different petitions.
Right.
The process now is whether or not you, the committee, want to recommend to the full commission, is this a proposal to amend the charter worthy of the Charter Commission owning? Like, do you want to take this on and own it as a potential
And as a
amendment?
practical matter, one of the first steps would be to have a hearing.
Correct, and you'd get public input. If this were not just submitted through email, if a formal petition had been brought forward, remember the deadline for that's May 1st each year, if this had been a petition, then we wouldn't be referring this to the Amendment Review Committee, because this is only for proposals from the council or proposals like this that aren't owned by someone that could be owned by the Charter Commission. If this came through for a petition, your process becomes very ministerial instead of,
Right.
with some decision-making authority. Once the petition is validated, your role is first and foremost to review the proposal, which would be, as you said, Commissioner Sandberg, the language of the proposal. If it's more than 500 words or 1,000 words, you all get to create a summary of that goes on the petition for the signatures.
And we get to say whether we like it or not, but our
We can't stop
our
it.
advice is what you call hortatory.
Correct. And so other than coming up with the summary language that goes on the petition itself for signatures, it comes back and then you process that through to the council. And as you said, Mr. Chair, then the council decides the language that voters see on the ballot.
But to be clear, and so there's
since
no...
there's no name on it, if it went through that kind of a process, then people could then contact you with their name and say, this is what we're interested in, what's our process, correct?
They could, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And, that then if they chose to follow the petition process, that would take it away from, I think, unless you all wanted to have a separate one.
To be clear, if this passed and were on the ballot, and a petition were brought to remove an elected official, I don't think the council would have discretion over the ballot question language for that.
Right,
It would
well,
be,
for that action.
Shall council member X or mayor X be removed from office?
Correct. I agree with you. I just want, we're using petition in
Yes.
multiple
You're right.
ways,
You're
and so I
right.
want to distinguish what these 3 different petitions are. I assume that if there is an amendment that allows for recall, and we describe the percent to make a valid petition, that petition would be very clear. We're recalling this official for that purpose, and that goes right to the
And
ballot.
sign it.
Oh, it has to say it has to specify the purpose on the ballot.
Well, that would be what the amendment would say. The statute
You know,
is,
that we
just
would
says
decide
for an
whether or
elected
not-
official.
Whether or not, other than to say, shall council member X be removed.
Right.
The St. Paul Charter says, in the published notice of any recall election, this is the notice, not the ballot, there shall be printed in not more than 200 words the grounds for recall stated in the petition.
Ooh.
And the officer sought to be recalled may respond in not more than 200 words.
Yeah, I would suggest that if we're serious in pursuing this in advance of the public hearing, we should work with the city attorney's office to say, what is recall at the state level, right? How does this play out? What are the other city charters that have recall? What do they say? And get a better understanding of what would need to be or should be included best practices, the minimum in a charter amendment for us.
Sure.
Again, because the statute that deals with this is just very vague.
Chair Kozak, I would like to I'd like to weigh in on the amendment well considered. In my network, so I'm not hearing the same thing that you're hearing. I have heard, these 2 emails are the first I've heard of a recall. I've heard people are not happy with certain elected officials, but I haven't heard anybody say that they wanted to recall them. I've heard that they want to vote them out of office next time they're up for re-election. But I think we don't, to Commissioner Sandberg's
Did you
point,
get that?
we don't really have an amendment to consider without having maybe a work group put together to, work with legal to go through these other 3 or 4 points. I don't think we're at that point.
I also think it would be premature to hold a public hearing until we've sort of fleshed out what this would look like. What is the signature threshold we're requiring? 5%? 50%?
Well, all that,
I think that was Casey was suggesting, is that it needs more substance, because right now it's too loosey-goosey.
well then, your points are well taken. And I think then what the decision we have to make here, Commissioner Perry suggested, if we were going to pursue this at all, we'd have to set up a work group and come up with a proposal, and then bring it to the full commission. But I think also, we should bring to the commission the very idea of a work group and see if they think it's worth pursuing. Is that?
There are 3 things that this committee can do. We could recommend to the full commission that we hold public hearings. We could recommend to the full commission that we not hold public hearings. Or we can recommend to the commission that the commission form a work group to further study this. And in all of those events, that would just be a recommendation, and ultimate decision is up to the Charter Commission.
I agree. I think those are the 3 alternatives. So, I guess,
So do you want a motion?
well, we should entertain a motion, yes.
No, I think that we should ask the Charter Commission to form a work group. I'd like to study it more. I'd like to dig into it a little bit and see what technical language we can come up with that would be agreeable. I'm, at this point, not willing to drop it totally, personally.
Anybody else?
As I said, I don't think it's well considered. So I would not support moving forward on it at this point.
I would just throw out that I support Jan to study it further. Only based on the fact that so many cities already have it, so I don't know what we would be afraid of to explore it further.
That's a good point.
I'd be interested to know what's behind these two submissions.
So would I.
So would I.
But that may be impossible to find out directly, unless we put out an appeal on Twitter and ask for them to come forward, because I've seen this similar language out there.
I would note that both of them were submitted within about an hour and a half.
Yeah, I know, they were talking, people were talking, and that happens, you know.
And I think at the work group, I think we've allowed, in the past, we've allowed public to come in to say their piece, have we not?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Sure.
Okay, anybody else?
I have no objection to having a work group formed.
Okay.
I don't think I would support this for the reason that Commissioner Perry mentioned. I don't think it is well considered. I also think in Minneapolis, if we adopted this, we'd have 14 petitions circulating just about all the time, so.
But-
And I'm not sure that's a productive
And
use
and
of
I
our
have,
election staff.
my bias is that elections matter. And of course, it would be a lot easier if there were the 2-year terms that we're experiencing right now, or like we used to have. But, you know, people make their votes, they make their decision, and then, I always think, you should live with it.
Well, if elections matter, then
Yeah.
a recall election is still an election.
Well, but, you know, I know that in the recent past, there have been 3 council members that were indicted. I believe all by the feds.
Was it all feds? I guess it must have been right.
Yeah, they were all federal.
Forgot.
And there were 3 convictions. And, but 2 of the council members resigned. And the 3rd one lost, oddly enough, he was under federal indictment, only lost by 300 votes. That was the 6th ward, I believe, or the 8th ward.
But we're not
Six.
talking
But
about.
anyway,
Six
but
of the
that,
nine.
so usually when there's something egregious that occurs, other things intervene. And so,
Well, it would be instructive to see how often this has been used in Minnesota City.
exactly.
And that's part of what the
exactly,
work
and
group
that's
did
what-
do.
If it's
Exactly.
never been used or only been used for the 2 hours.
Two barbers.
2 hours.
Underwater
then
hotel, yeah.
Maybe it's not really necessary if nobody's ever used it.
So, no, I agree, and I'm skeptical also, but I think that, you know, in deference to Commissioner Mackey, if you've been hearing people, let's take a look. 'Cause sooner or later, my guess is if we got these 2, there'll be more. Things start getting controversial.
Sure.
So,
And if it's playing out on Twitter and there's a lot of conversation, I think it's only justified to listen to it, you know, if you open up the work group a little bit, see if people come in, hear what's going on.
I
Yeah.
agree.
okay, so I think everybody has had their piece. So all those in favor of Commissioner Mackey's or Commissioner Sandberg's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Casey's taking notes.
I don't think we need a roll call for that. So the next step then is to go to the vote next week, right?
Yeah.
Aren't we delayed by a week? We're not the first week in October, we're the second week? Are we the first week? Oh, maybe that's November, I can't remember.
November, I think, because of the election.
Should be.
Something got delayed for me.
I thought July was the only month we were not on the first one.
Well, actually,
I
I
got
don't-
Charter Commission on the 12th. of
I have
October.
Charter Commission on the 12th.
I think we ran into a religious holiday, didn't we?
Might.
Something, I think
Oh,
so.
Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur is next.
I know I have my Jewish holiday, it was a Jewish holiday, I remember because Andrea mentioned something.
Well, the 12th is actually a holiday. Is that, what did you say, 11 or 12?
No,
The
it's on the
12th.
12th, yeah,
It's the
October
12th.
12th.
Is the 12th?
What is
The 10th is a
12th?
holiday, I'm not sure why it's.
Oh,
still
the
on.
10th is now the holiday.
Yes,
Oh,
doesn't
November,
say.
no, not November.
The
Well,
10th is Indigenous
So
Peoples'
what is
Day.
October 5th?
It was, I think it was a religious, it
That's
changed at the beginning of
That's
the year.
Yom Kippur.
Then it is Yom.
It's Yom Kippur.
Oh, and I donate
It's not
blood,
on the
so that's,
city calendar.
We don't want you passing.
No
out.
holiday.
No.
or-
I got in trouble with that once.
Okay, so the work group, would it be this committee plus others, or?
Well,
a
first the
special?
Charter
We-
Commission has to.
Yeah, they have to
Charter
approve
Commission
it.
would have to say, yes, we want a work
Yeah.
group, and then we would form a work group as we always have with people's self-nominated.
Okay, all right.
Anybody who's interested can participate.
Even those of us who haven't been reappointed.
We'll have to see.
There's time yet.
I know.
Okay, I think that's,
Okay.
I think that includes our business.
Good.
Um,
Well, thanks for bringing that in.
Are we on
Aaron.
TV today?
Not today, no.
No.
It says,
This room
watch
is-
the Comcast Channel 14.
Well, you can watch it, there just won't be.
There won't be
anybody
anything
you
there
know.
for you.